Hello, fellow members of the Alliance, and welcome to the Alliance Football Podcast. I'm your host, Rod Villagomez. Find me on Twitter at RJ Villagomez. Find the show on Twitter at Alliance FB Pod. We are done with Week 1 action in the AAF. How does it feel? How's everybody feeling today? You feeling good? Feeling like you've watched a weekend of football after there shouldn't be any? I, for one, was generally happy and overall pleased at the fact that I could sit back on the weekend and watch some more football. Football did not end in February. We got to enjoy some football. This extended version of the intro is going to be that way because we're going to go over a little bit of just how generally happy and maybe some of the things that happened. So relax a little bit. This intro is going to take a little bit longer. Full disclosure, though, I didn't get to actually watch every game live, but I did go back and watch them all, by my DVR box and other means. So, like I said, I wished I could have experienced it all super live, but I didn't. But I still experienced it all, so it was pretty awesome. But like I said before, I'm generally happy. I said in a tweet and in several tweets that there was going to be some hiccups. There was going to be some things that were going to go wrong, that everybody should just take a deep breath, calm down, relax, and expect some stuff to go wrong. And there was plenty that went wrong. But there was also a lot of stuff that went right. And so for me, just the fact that there was players out there playing football was a good start, and that the quality of play, while not obviously up to the NFL level, looks like it's going to be something that over the next few weeks, as they get to know each other more, because remember, these players have not been together all that long, and we're expecting them to churn out a finished product in the better part of 2 months, right? 2.5 months or something like that. So it's expecting a lot from the get-go. But I think we are in for a lot of great close games coming up. I know there was a blowout in the first night. Orlando. Wow. We'll go over that game later. But really, overall, again, I feel like as they start to mesh, as these folks calm down, this is all opening night jitters, we're going to see some great football. Because we saw some great football on the field immediately. So I feel like that is something to take away from a really good starting point. I like the idea of a sky judge. I liked the concept of the fact that they took you up in there. And what I was actually pleasantly surprised with is that they actually played the audio from the sky judge and that you were able to listen to the ruling on the field getting scrutinized. And I know there's a lot of people that disagree and actually didn't like that because, a couple of calls that they said they got wrong, it's like they didn't want to hear it anyway. So no one's going to be completely happy. But I kind of like that. I still don't know that I like the complete and total mic'd up. I know that there's people that really do enjoy listening to the huddle and listening to, the people call the plays. But when the announcers are talking over that and then the coach, it just gets a little distracting. Like if you're going to do it, just either give me the sounds on the field or give me the announcers, but don't give me both. I don't necessarily care. And I know that this is to engage other football fans that maybe aren't as hardcore as us, because for me, okay, great. I hear the play called, whatever. But I don't need that. I don't need that personally. I just want to watch it unfold. So, yeah, give me the announcers or give me the play on the field. And for the record, I know that there's folks that were out there touting, the AAF is taking you in for the first time. No, the CFL's been doing that for a while. So, yeah, another random CFL reference. You're going to shut me off for those, but I don't care at this point. But I do. I like and I actually like the sped up pace of play. And not from the standpoint of the TV timeouts and all that other stuff. I'm talking about just with the play clock being shorter. You can tell that these folks are not used to it. They're used to having all day in between plays. And now even 5 seconds makes a huge difference. And you heard Luis Perez just telling everybody, hurry up, let's go. So these players are still trying to get used to that, but I love it because it does make people think a lot faster, and it's a lot more fast-paced. And so I think that's going to be good going forward as well. And I like that everybody out there was hungry. I really do. I loved watching folks that are passionate about playing football play football again. It's not, nobody's out there trying to just manage through another 3-year, $300 million contract. They're just out there because they love the game and they're playing and they're trying to get up to that level. But I just saw a lot of actual passion out on the field, and I haven't seen that in so long. And so it was nice. It was nice to watch a passionate football game full of folks that were not out there for a paycheck, but for a chance to get that paycheck. And that's going to make people a whole lot hungrier. All right, now for the not so nice stuff, for the things that I know that over the next 10 weeks, AAF, Charlie, Abersol, all those guys, Bill Pulliam, they're all going to be pulling their hair out trying to improve on this stuff. And first of all, the app. All right, I don't need a gimmick to watch a football game. I'd watch if there was no fantasy. I'd watch if there was no anything. I'd watch because it's football. Now, I get it. They're trying to appeal to the masses, but the predictive game, especially when you touted fantasy in a new way. Okay, this, yes, might be fantasy in a new way, but it was clunky. It wasn't fun because I didn't really want to. I mean, picking the plays before they happen is all fine and well if I'm sitting on the couch next to my brother watching football and I say, hey, they're probably going to run right. You know, I don't need points attached to that if I'm right. My brother knows I'm right. But at the same time, it just took away from my actual enjoyment of the game because I wasn't even staring down at the app because it wasn't really in sync with the broadcast. So I was picking a play and then the app was a little bit ahead. So I was watching the play kind of play out in front of me and then looked up at the TV and it played out there. So I was, in a sense, kind of ruining it for myself because I saw what was going to happen and then I looked up and I saw it happening. So I don't need that kind of interaction in a game. There was no betting like they said there would be, unless they say that's the betting. And I know they said they're going to roll out this stuff in the next few weeks, but you only got 10 weeks. Now you got 9 weeks left. There's not a whole lot of rolling out you can do now. You've either got to give it all to us, what you're going to give us, or not, because it's at this point you promised quite a bit with this app, and this app is nothing with what we were actually promised. So I, for one, again, I don't need the app now. I really don't. There's no companion. There's nothing that I can do other than watching the games live, which obviously was good. But if you're, and we're going to hear now, we're going to get to this. If you're going to stream games from your app, make sure that you have the licenses to stream all the games from your app. When it came time for Memphis and Birmingham, and 2 minutes before the first snap, you tell people, oh, by the way, due to licensing restrictions, we can't actually play this game on our app. Well, now you just made an entire fan base mad because I was at a point where I couldn't watch my TV and I was going to rely on watching it live on the app. Couldn't do that because of licensing restrictions. And these are, as a broadcaster and somebody in the media, this isn't something that you just discover 2 minutes before kickoff. This is something that you would have already known, maybe even months in advance when you worked out the deal. They should have told you, hey, listen, you can't stream this from your app. It wasn't like 10 minutes before the game, NFL Network noticed, oh, hey, guess what? You're streaming it from the app. You got to stop that. Now, I mean, this is something they should have known. So if you're going to roll something out and launch this with huge fanfare, at least make sure that we're all on board and that we can all do what you say we can do. And that, it's just, I'm of the philosophy of under promising and over delivering. I get that you want to launch with giant, gusto and you want to make everything so appealing automatically because that's the world we live in now. All the bells and whistles have to be announced and everybody's got to be looking forward to it, and podcasters like us have to speculate about it. But I would rather them have not said anything about anything, because then at least when I'm getting the app, if I saw that, I would say, oh, wow, this is pretty neat. But instead, you promised me that I'd have fantasy options on there. You'd promised me all kinds of stuff that you promised me from the app. And really all we got was the ability to watch the games from the app, which again is cool, except for the one that we couldn't. And this weird fantasy game that I'm probably not going to play. I may end up going to the hashtag 0XP squad. that's out there. Look it up on Twitter, hashtag 0XP. Folks that will not be playing the fantasy game. Because listen, I've already got enough fantasy as it is, especially with the folks at Fanball going on with the daily fantasy and our season-long draft that we've got amongst the podcasters and such. So Anyways, look, but overall, I'm going to tell you right now, I am happy. I'm happy that the buzz is there about this league. I'm happy that week 1 happened and that a lot of people took note. A lot of big names took note. A lot of folks that, are NFL folks, are just big sports folks. They all took note of this league and what they're trying to do. And I think a lot more heads were turned, and this is going to bode well for the next 9 weeks of the regular season. So we'll see how far the momentum carries them. But anyways, like I said, overall first impressions, I'm okay. I'm exactly where I thought this was going to be. I'm exactly where I thought that this league was going to be on day 1 and day 2. So I, for one, am going to continue watching. I'm going to continue podcasting about it because I am excited for the next 9 weeks to see how this thing progresses and how it grows, if it grows, and what kind of improvements they're going to make. I have not written this league off. And to those of you who are, well, if you've written this league off, you're not listening to this show. But if you're listening to this show and you were considering writing the league off, don't. Give it some time. Watch next week. If by next week you still don't like it, okay. I will give you permission to go ahead and ditch the league. But just at least give it one more week, and let's see where this thing goes. Because I, like I said, am super excited, and I can't wait to see what else the AAF has in store. So happy opening weekend, and let's get down to the rest of the show. This show is going to be recaps. We're gonna switch to 2 shows a week. This show will be instant recaps on usually Monday. Okay, I will try to get it out on Sunday night, Monday morning. But this week I couldn't do it. Had work, couldn't sit down at Sunday night. I'd actually finished watching the Birmingham game today in order to get this done. So we're gonna try to get this on first thing Monday morning, and then the next episode will be either Thursday or Friday. I haven't decided which one yet. But that'll be the preview show, interview show, shows to get you ready for the coming week. So we're two a week. It's gonna be amazing. So let's continue with the show. So many of us on the West Coast got the opportunity to watch the very, very first game of the AAF season, which was, wow, I got to tell you, again, it was super exciting to actually be able to watch some AAF football and see it play out in front of us. But we got to watch the San Antonio Commanders take on the San Diego Fleet in a game that was, again, it was full of jitters. Let's just give it to how it was. These guys were out here amped up on a national stage on CBS in front of their home fans, San Antonio's home fans, for the first time ever. And I got to tell you, it was still a very, very good start to the season. And it was something that I enjoyed watching, and I hope that America did. Because on Twitter, boy, it was going crazy. I know that the AAF outdrew even NBA and all that other good stuff on TV. So there was a good buzz about it. And like I said, a lot of them were watching the Fleet take on the Commanders. And in this game, boy, I got to tell you, the play that I think is going to be, and I tweeted this, and I said that the hit on Mike Bercovici by Sean Washington was going to be the hit that puts the AAF on the map. That was an early big play, which is why I think that they did not throw the penalty flag. Because, first of all, I know that there's a lot of people that are going to say that was totally a penalty. And in the NFL, that absolutely would be a penalty. But I don't know. I've looked at it from a lot of different angles. I can't see where the penalty is other than that it was a very, very huge hit on an unblocked quarterback. But, here we go with player safety and whatever. But whatever the non-call was, just the simple fact that hit happened, and it happened so viciously and went so viral, when SportsCenter puts it up, when everybody puts it up, that is going to be the signature play of the first season of the AAF. Because, again, it happened on a national stage, and it happened so fast, and it happened early in the game. And it pretty much just set the tone for not just the league, but for the entire game, because Burko was under pressure all night long. And he could not get into any sort of rhythm. It was a very, very rough game for Bercovici. He ended up going 15 to 25 for 176 yards and 2 interceptions on the night. And Philip Nelson came in relief for him. Only 5 of 10 for 68 yards and a 2-point, and an interception. And it's one of those things where we heard Mike Martz talk about, well, we're about to make a switch at quarterback. We're about to take out Burko if something else goes wrong. And they did. That was one of the I guess, high points of having the coaches, Mike, is that we got to hear Mike Martz make his decision ultimately that Burkovici had to come out because he just did not look settled at all. San Antonio was all over them and ended up with 6 sacks on the night. It was a huge night for the San Antonio Commanders defense. Again, they were just all over it. 3 interceptions. It was a very, very stout game for the Commanders. And in fact, leading that was Sean Washington with 2 sacks on the night. So it was a great night for them. And again, it was something that America got to see right out of the box, a very competitive game. The score itself, 15-6 wasn't a huge scoring game. But there was a lot of action in it. And that's what I said from the start. I don't need to see high-flying, high-scoring games, nor do I really want to see, like a 3-6 game. But if it's full of big plays and if it's full of memorable plays, then that's going to be a better game to me than, a 40-6 blowout. Be that as it may. On the Commander side of the ball, Logan Woodside actually had himself a pretty decent night. 18-36 for 255 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he looked like he had it going on. He looked a little more poised and a little more calm than did Burko. Now, obviously, he wasn't super lighting it up, but he had himself a pretty decent game passing, and again, was the reason why the Commanders ended up winning. On the rushing side of the ball, Jawan Gardner was the leading rusher for the Fleet. He had 55 yards on 8 carries, backed up by Philip Nelson, who had 3 scrambles for 20 yards. So Gardner getting the bulk of the work at running back for the Fleet. For the Commanders, it was Aaron Green, who had 43 yards on 6 carries. So he busted out a 21-yarder, which kind of padded his stats. But it was Kenneth Farrow who had the bulk of the work with 14 carries, 37 yards, and a touchdown for him. For the receiving side of it, Gavin Escobar, 66 yards on 4 receptions. And remember, Escobar was the big tight end out of the Cowboys. And he was the leading receiver, but he actually had a 26-yarder, which gave him the majority of his yards. And one of those catches was actually a pretty good adjustment that he made on a route to pick up a bunch of yards after the catch. So he looked good. I think going forward, they're going to want to lean on him, especially if Burkovici can't get it going early and often. He's going to have to lean on his tight end a lot more. Somebody else with 66 yards was Brian Brown. He had 5 catches on 7 targets. He had a long of 29 yards. And then Dontez Ford, 3 catches, 56 yards on 2 targets. Well, that can't happen. 3 receptions for 56 yards. He had a long of 32. So again, those are the leading receivers for San Diego. And none of these guys really, had a whole lot of receiving yards, and obviously none of them had touchdowns, as it was just a rough night overall for that San Diego offensive line. Could not keep Burkovici in the pocket very long to make deep throws. For San Antonio, big play McKay, right? Mikhail McKay. He had 5 receptions on 12 targets for 80 yards. Alonzo Moore, 3 receptions on 5 targets for 78 yards. And then Greg Ward Jr., 5 receptions for 9 yards. 5 receptions, 9 targets, 65 yards. So a pretty decent day for the San Antonio Commanders receivers. Again, this was such a great showcase of what this league is all about. And it was a great way to start the day. Start the night for those of us on the West Coast being able to watch the AAF in action for the first time. Just some takeaways from this is that San Diego's really going to have to work on making sure that Burkovici is protected if he's going to do anything. And likewise in the running game, Jawan Gardner did well in this game. He had, the 55 yards on 8 carries. He had a good 25-yard scamper. Looked good. But if the offensive line can give him more lanes to run, he may actually gain 100 yards here pretty soon. He looked spry. He looked like he was ready to go. And again, he was pretty much the main workhorse for San Diego. Of course, they got down and had to keep passing, but 8 carries for him and 55 yards, that's a lot of hopeful for the Fleet. For the Commanders, they looked good and clean all the way around. The only thing is, of course, they didn't, like I said, light up the scoreboard like an Orlando or like an Arizona, but they have some pieces, and if they can find the groove, I think they'll make their way up to the top echelon of this league this season at least. Kenneth Farrow looked shifty. He didn't have any huge breakaway runs, but he did look like he's a guy that, he had 14 carries, and that's a lot for a running back in one of the first games of the season. So, especially in this game where, like I said in the intro, with the sped up play clock, it doesn't leave a lot to, have a running game that doesn't work. So if a couple of carries go wrong, you kind of feel backed up and you're going to have to pass. So I think if Farrow can make it to where he can get more than 2.6 yards per carry, he may get the ball a few times more. But anyways, all right, overall first great game or first good game and a great way to start the AAF season. All right, let's get to the next recap. We turn to the second game that was played at the same time as the first game. The Orlando Apollos over the Atlanta Legends, 40-6 in a game that was not really even close. The Orlando Apollos honestly just came and balled out and took away with them a huge victory and a great showing by Garrett Gilbert, who, again, as we know, started or played at least in that last game with the Carolina Panthers this last season. So we know that he was already ready to play some ball, and it seemed like the Apollos rose to the occasion. So Garrett Gilbert in that game did it all, actually. He was 15 of 25 for 227 yards and 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion, but he also caught a 5-yard touchdown on the Orlando special from Jalen Marshall. And that play right there, again, that huge hit on Mike Bercovici and this Orlando special. On opening night, to have those two plays to sort of be the bookends of opening week, I don't think Charlie Abersol could have asked for anything better. I think he should give Gilbert and Sean Washington a little bit of a bonus for giving folks something to talk about on social media after week one. But again, Garrett Gilbert, 15 to 25, 227, 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. And then he caught that 5-yard touchdown from Jalen Marshall, who that was his only attempt and his only completion for those 5 yards. So good night for Jalen Marshall, but not quite the same night for Matt Sims, who went 15 of 28 for 126 yards and 2 interceptions. But again, to be honest, that Orlando defense was stout. It was good, and it was furious. So, I don't see Matt Sims being able to do much of anything against them anyways. So, when you have the offense clicking like you do, the defense takes a lot of pride in that, and they want to go out and also be the talk of the town. And Orlando ended up doing that. Only holding the Legends to 6 points. But, of course, the trivia question is that the very first points were scored by an Atlanta Legend. So, Young Ho Koo was the guy that put up the first points in the Alliance on his foot, which is a 3-point field goal. And, that was it. So there's your trivia question. On the rushing side of the ball, it was Taron Folston who did the most of the work for the Legends. He had 32 yards on 12 carries, busted out a long of 10. So, again, not a huge night for any running back. Loris Pittman, 3 carries for 24 yards. Justin Thomas had a carry for 12 yards. So, Denard Robinson, who many folks were pinning a lot of their hopes on in fantasy and otherwise, he got 5 carries in this game, only 3 yards. So, Denard Robinson, very much a non-factor for the Legends. The Apollos, on the other hand, on the rushing end, had Akeem Hunt, who actually went bonkers, to be honest with you. 10 for 73. And I say bonkers, but bonkers in this case, there wasn't a whole lot of huge rushing performances in this week. So 10 for 73 with a 31-yard beauty of a run was pretty bonkers. But Akeem Hunt got the majority of the work for the Apollos. Again, 10 carries, 73 yards, 31 was the long. And then Ernest Johnson had 5 carries for 35 yards. And then Devon Smith had the rushing touchdown in this game on 13 yards and 5 carries. He also had a 2-point conversion. And Garrett Gilbert with a 2-point conversion on the ground after that receiving touchdown. So good for Garrett Gilbert. On the Atlanta Legends receiving side, not a whole lot of numbers you want to write home on. Shantavius Jones, he had 3 receptions for 43 yards. Justin Thomas caught all 4 of his targets for 35 yards. Bug Howard caught 4 of his 5 targets for 34 yards. And then Charles Stanberry caught 2 for 20. Just not a very good performance by the Legends passing attack at all. But this game, again, once it started to get out of hand, you just, again, started to see some runs by Akeem Hunt. And it was not necessarily a very close game at all. So the fact that these players were out here making huge plays, even in a game that wasn't necessarily close, still spoke to how hungry they were to try to go out and show that they could still play, even in a game that was so very, very out of hand. Couple of early takeaways, though, is that Garrett Gilbert looks really good. He looks like he could be a major player in this league for this season, and he looks like he's got receivers that can do something with him. He looks like he's got some folks that can play. Jalen Marshall became one of his favorite targets early on, and then Charles Johnson actually did well also. So both of those guys look like they are able to keep up with Garrett Gilbert and are going to give him a couple of weapons to use and use judiciously coming up for the rest of the season. 9 games left, but I between him and John Wolford, who we'll talk about later, those 2 guys, and Luis Perez, those 3 may have set themselves up on a pedestal as far as the elite quarterbacks in this league. I know, too early to be throwing the word elite around, but whatever. It's how sports works, right? So, all right, yeah, but that's the takeaway. I mean, again, and then look for, again, Akeem Hunt. He's one of those guys where he's given another shot, and he wasn't a bad running back in the NFL. He just didn't have enough reps to make it. But he has an opportunity, I think, to prove himself as a good running back in this league. So it was a lot of fun to watch a lot of new faces, though, and it was a lot of fun to see some folks that you wouldn't necessarily have paid attention to when they were in the NFL. But now they get to come down here and be stars and to play at a pretty high level. All right, so that was that's about it from the Orlando and Atlanta game. Again, 40-6. Most of it was all on the Orlando side anyways. But yeah, just watch out for those guys. They look like they've got a pretty stacked squad and that they're ready to go and make a good run at the championship for the season. For completing 18 of 29 passes for 275 yards and 4 touchdowns, John Wolford is Week 1's Player of the Week. And here's your Week 1 fantasy recap. Fantasy leaders for Week 1 at quarterback, John Wolford of the Arizona Hotshots, 18 of 29 for 275 yards and 4 touchdowns, gave him 33.3 points. At running back, Trent Richardson of the Birmingham Iron, 58 yards on 23 carries for 2 touchdowns, added 1 reception for 14 yards, gave him 20.2 points. At wide receiver / quarterback, we should probably say, Jalen Marshall of the Orlando Apollos, 3 receptions for 51 yards and a touchdown. Also, that Orlando special for 1 passing touchdown, that 5-yarder to Garrett Gilbert, gave him 18.3 yards. At flex, Jarrell Presley of the Arizona Hotshots, 64 yards on 18 carries, 1 2-point conversion. He added a 21-yard touchdown reception and a 2-point conversion to his total, giving him 18.4 fantasy points. And those are your fantasy leaders from Week 1 over on fanball.com. If you want to play some daily fantasy AAF, head down to fanball.com right now. So let's turn our attention to the Birmingham Iron, who hosted the Memphis Express for Week 1. Birmingham pitched a shutout, 26-0 over the Express in a game that was not even competitive, I think, in the least. It was a game that Birmingham owned from start to finish, and it just looked like Memphis was all out of sorts and really had no rhythm, no continuity, and really nothing to hang their hats on other than maybe a pretty decent game out of Zach Stacy, who looked good at times. But let's just take a dive into the stats here. Christian Hackenberg for the Express, again, a forgettable day for him. 10 of 23 for 87 yards and an interception, and could not at all get anything going. The 10 completions didn't even... It just seemed to be that he could not find anybody other than anyone on the slants or the crossing routes or anybody underneath. Didn't really have time to take shots downfield. Didn't even look like he knew what he was, really looking for downfield. So just a very, very forgettable day for Hackenberg. And this is one of those instances where I'm a little bit happy that the microphones were turned on to him, because I don't know about you, but I heard a lot of complaining and a lot of yelling out of Christian Hackenberg. And he's not listening to this podcast, and I don't care if he did, because you as a leader don't need to complain so much about what's going on. I saw him not trying to lead, but he was complaining to his receivers about the routes they were running, about this and about that, and everything was F this, and oh my God. I understand passion, and I understand anger, and I understand getting mad. But at the same time, use that position as a quarterback and as a leader to try to rally the troops instead of complain to them about the routes that they're running and about the thing. I don't know. He seemed very, very whiny as opposed to a poised quarterback like a Luis Perez. Luis Perez was very poised and very calm and very, helpful with his tone and his. I know he wasn't losing but at the same time, the leadership qualities kind of shone through in Lewis, even in everything he was doing. Whereas Hackenberg never sounded fully in command. He never sounded like he actually had anybody's support. He just sounded whiny and complainy. And his 10 for 23 with an interception proved that. Brandon Silvers came in, didn't do any better. 3 of 4 for 22 yards and an interception. So again, a forgettable day for the Express passing game. On the other hand, Birmingham had a great showing with Luis Perez, 19 on 33 for 252 yards and a 2-point conversion. He never threw a touchdown pass, but I got to tell you, he looked very, very solid. Like I said, it transcended just his stats on the field. He looked in command of that offense from the second they took the field. And very much that everybody was paying attention to him. If you looked at his poise in the huddle, right? You can tell that there were some folks that were trying to distract or trying to take away. And Lewis did a lot to get those people focused and to get them back on track. There was a lot of, hey, look over here, or hey, pay attention right here, or hey, listen up. To try to get folks to get back in gear, because again, with a shorter play clock, they don't have all day to mess around. They've got to get the play in and they've got to get up to the line. So as far as being a leader and as far as being somebody that had control of his offense, Luis Perez definitely was that guy. And it showed in the cohesiveness of the offense and a lot of the big plays that were being made by his receivers and by the running backs toward at least the end of the game. So, 252 yards on 19 completions, a very good day for Luis Perez. For the Express rushing, Zach Stacy, 12 carries, 58 yards, and of course nobody found the end zone. But Stacy looked good. Stacy looked like, at 4.8 yards per carry, that's not a bad average. And he looked like he had some power in his running again. He's been known for his power running anyways, especially when he was with the Rams. But he looked like he still had it, right? He looked good at 4.8 yards a clip. He had a good long 11-yard run that actually was, I think, a signature Stacy run. He powered through and was able to at least break a tackle and get in through the hole for 11 yards. So not a bad day for Zach Stacy in the loss. But on the Birmingham side of it, I said it in the podcast before the week that Trent Richardson, I said it in the article that I wrote for Fanball. Trent Richardson pretty much epitomizes Alabama rushing. And, again, his yard total was the exact same as Zach Stacy's. 58 yards they both got. Now, Trent Richardson got it on 23 carries, so he only averaged 2.5 yards per carry. He was not blowing it out. His longest run was 10 yards. So he wasn't necessarily breaking these huge long runs, but he was gritty, he was powering, and he just kept pushing, and he got his 2 touchdowns. And so, it's just a matter of Trent Richardson just proving that he was not playing around. He's not playing around this season. He does want to go back to the NFL. I think he's tired of the stigma of what he was and what he still can be. So, Trent Richardson, look out. If he can get going, and if he can actually break a few runs, 23 carries on the night, on a night where, the Birmingham Iron scored 26 points. He got fed the ball a lot. And that's probably not going to slow down any at all. Ladarius Perkins actually came in and carried the ball 5 times too. And Ladarius Perkins is somebody that not a lot of people, I'm sure that not a lot of people know about him. He actually did spend some time in the CFL with the Edmonton Eskimos. So he's got some experience. Did pretty well with the Eskimos. He wasn't like a barn burner or anything, but he had some good carries with the Eskimos. But he got 5 of them here for 13 yards. He actually averaged more yards per carry than did Trent Richardson. He got 2.6 yards per carry, where Trent got 2.5. So yeah. But Luis Perez carried the ball 6 times for 12 yards and a 2-point conversion. So take that away. Luis could do it with his legs as well. Big night for him. And then on the receiving end of it, Alton Pig Howard. He was the leading receiver for the Express. And again, it was a lot of these crossing routes. It was a lot of these little hitch routes, little screen routes. And then the receiver took the ball for the rest of the yardage. But Howard caught 4 of his 6 targets for 33 yards with a 17 long. Reese Horn caught 2 balls for 28 yards. And then Rajon Neal, the running back, caught 3 for 12. So Fabian Guerrera, only with 1 reception on 4 targets for 11 yards. A lot of people thought he was going to be a huge part of the game. And you heard the announcer say it all night long. Where's Fabian Guerrera? Where's Fabian Guerrera? Well, he only caught 1 of 4 targets for 11 yards. So the guy that was big in the preseason failed to really show up in the first game. Dontez Bird, who I thought was going to have a good game, only caught 1 ball on only 1 target for 8 yards. So he failed to have an impressive day as I thought he might. But for Birmingham, how about Quentin Patton, huh? The 100-yard receiver for week 1. He caught 4 of his 9 targets for 107 yards. And one that I'm sure a lot of Memphis Express fans are going to say was not a catch and that the eye in the sky missed. But I don't know. To me, it looked like it hit off of his calf or his thigh or some part of his leg and not necessarily the ground. But again, I don't think there was enough to overturn it anyways. And I think the Sky Judge was correct in keeping that a catch. But Patton looked like he was on all cylinders. And I feel, with his time with the Niners, as a Niner fan, I remember watching him play. I did like him. And I just wish that there was a way that he could have found a spot on the roster. But unfortunately, that team was so bad at the time that I don't think anybody really could find home there. So Quentin Patton, again, 4 receptions for 107 yards, a very good showing for him on game 1. And he made some impressive catches. They weren't all, dink and dunk plays. He made some pretty impressive catches. That 42-yarder that we were talking about was a beautiful pass by Perez and a great route by Patton. And whether or not he trapped it, I don't know. Just the fact that he was there to make that type of a play, I think was good enough for me. So other receivers of note, Devontae Felton had a catch for 32 yards. Brandon Bowman, the tight end, had 2 catches for 32 yards. And then, of course, he had to leave the game. And then Amamba Etatao had 2 receptions for 16 yards. And then Trent Richardson had 1 catch for 14 yards. So, again, it was a great night for Luis Perez. Very, very great as far as leaderships or taking leadership and actually leading his offense the way I think a young quarterback should. And if if I was a scout, I'd be looking at more than his play on the field. I would have been paying attention to the way, like I said earlier in this segment, he handled his team and he handled his teammates. He was the leader on that field, and everybody knew it. Whereas if you look at a guy like Christian Hackenberg, that did not show through. So, all right, that'll be it for that game. Again, just fun to watch, and I'm going to probably watch it again before week 2 so I can remind myself of how it all went. We take a look at the final game of the weekend. The Arizona Hotshots taking on the Salt Lake Stallions. Arizona taking care of business in a game that was more competitive, I think, than any of the games before them were. Even though the score may not seem like it was that competitive, this actually had moments where the tide could have turned, but it didn't. So Arizona still, though, walking away with a win, 38-22 over the Salt Lake Stallions. Again, it was a great game for the Hotshots. And a decent game for Salt Lake. They had flashes. Unfortunately, they couldn't sustain those flashes, and they wound up losing the game. So for Salt Lake, the passing numbers: Josh Woodrum, 10 of 22, 103 yards, a touchdown, an interception, and a 2-point conversion. And then Matt Linehan came in, 7 of 13 for 56 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. So between the two of them, 2 touchdown passes and 159 yards passing. Again, not a very, very good game for the quarterbacks combined. And again, it wasn't a huge showing, but they kind of snuck in every once in a while when you thought the game was going to get out of hand. They had a drive where they would get closer and wound up making the score closer than it probably should have been. But for the Hotshots, the player of the week, John Wolford, he came in and threw 275 yards on 18 completions and 4 touchdown passes, 2 2-point conversions. So he had himself a very fine day. And out of all the quarterbacks, where we said Luis Perez looked like the complete package, Wolford looked like he basically had run of the entire offense and that he could throw whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. And really just made it look like it was pretty simple for him. Pitch and catch is what he was playing with his receivers all night long, and it looked very impressive from where I was sitting. And for me, I think John Wolford set himself apart along with Garrett Gilbert and Luis Perez as 3 of the guys to watch for this upcoming season. We'll see, though. I mean, we got a long way to go. But Wolford looks like he's got what it takes to play, certainly in this league. Salt Lake City rushing, Brandon Oliver. Now, this is where I got a little frustrated because I thought Matt Asiata would definitely be the guy that would run away with this. And Matt Asiata was in the first few snaps of the game for Salt Lake, but he could not get anything going on his first couple of carries, and they just went away from him. So Brandon Oliver came in, and then Joel Bogan came in as well, and they both actually carried the load for the team. Brandon Oliver had 8 carries for 40 yards and a 2-point conversion. But it was Joel Boagnon that actually had the bulk of the carries. He had 16 carries for 39 yards. And it was just something that he had the hot hand, and they kind of rode it. But he had 16 carries, but he only managed 2.4 yards per carry on those carries. So it wasn't as if he was coming in again and breaking off huge runs. He had the bulk of the work. And then Brandon Oliver came in. But Matt Asiata did get a touchdown on a 4-yard, on a 1-yard run. So that was pretty good for him. He'd gotten the end zone, which saved my fantasy day. But again, was not the usage that I was hoping for out of Matt Asiata. On the Arizona side, Jarrell Presley had a pretty nice day. He had 18 carries for 64 yards and a 2-point conversion. But where he did his damage was in the receiving game, and we'll get there soon. Justin Stockton had 7 carries for 46 yards. And Larry Rose, the third, had 6 carries of his own for 16 yards and a 2-point conversion. Wolford actually had 2 2-point conversions on the ground as well, as far as rushing is concerned. For the Stallions receiving, not a lot to write home about. Anthony Denham, 5 catches for 59 yards. Dre's Anderson, 2 catches for 25 yards, and so on and so forth. Nick Truesdale actually had one of the touchdowns for the Stallions. He got all 3 of his targets for 23 yards. Jordan Leslie, caught 2 targets for 15 yards and a touchdown as well. And that was pretty much all there was for the Stallions receiving. For Arizona, on the other hand, Rashard Ross, another 100-yard receiver on the night. He had 5 receptions for 103 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that Wolford-Ross connection looked good on week 1. And in fact, Ross looked very good. He had good route running skills, and he actually had good separation. His long was a 41-yarder, and it was a beauty. So Wolford just dropped a dime to Ross. So it looks like that connection could live and hopefully thrive this season for both players. And if you're a fantasy player, make sure you have circled Ross on your roster and watch him go off. So Richard Mullaney caught 5 passes for 57 yards. Gerald Christian, 3 catches, 44 yards and a touchdown. And then Jarrell Presley, as I talked about, doing some damage in the receiving game. He actually caught a 30-yard pass for a touchdown and then a 2-point conversion also on that drive. So a lot of weapons for this Arizona Hot Shots team. And it looked like, to me, along with Birmingham, they are the complete team in the league. And if I were to do power rankings, Arizona would be number 1 on that list, but I don't do power rankings. So, but I think Arizona, to me, looked the most impressive overall. And I think that they have a very powerful offense that can move the ball with relative ease. And I just see good things happening for them as the season progresses. For Salt Lake, on the other hand, they looked out of sorts. They didn't look like they could get into any sort of a rhythm. And then in certain places they did. And then it just, I don't know, it was a very, very hiccupy team. It was something that wasn't very consistent. And they put up 22 points. So go figure, right? I mean, in a losing effort, they actually were the team that scored the highest in a losing effort. So they would have beat, obviously, Memphis this week. They would have beat San Antonio and San Diego this week. So they would have beat just about everybody with the exception of Orlando this week. So luck of the draw that they picked Arizona, one of the hottest teams in the league. So unfortunately, they just drew the wrong straw and weren't able to play one of the other struggling teams this week. So there was. All right, that's it for that game. Let's go ahead and finish the show. And that'll do it for the Monday edition of this week's Alliance Football Podcast. We are done breaking down all of the games, and when we come back on the next episode, we'll start previewing some games. We'll have a couple of good guests for you coming up, and just a lot of fun to be had. We'll talk some fantasy and all kinds of other good things. So I'm loving this 2 a week. Can't wait to start pounding out more content, and we've only got 9 more weeks left of the season, so we better hurry up. Just kidding. But all right, thanks once again for listening to the show. I cannot tell you how amazing it is. Thank you to my fans in Australia. Thank you to the Spanish fans. Thank you to the folks in Portugal, in Guam. I mean, all over the world, there are people listening to this show. It is amazing. Thanks to the UK folks. Thanks for all of you listeners out there. Austria, Germany, anywhere you are listening to this show, I just want to tell you right now, I am absolutely thankful for you, and tell your friends, because this show has been growing in leaps and bounds over the last couple of weeks, and it is exciting that you are listening to this show and that you are supporting the Alliance Football Podcast, and more importantly, that you're supporting the AAF, because this league is only going to be stronger if we're stronger. So, yep, until later this week, we're going to put out another show. So until then, this is so exciting, and I can't wait for another week of Alliance Football. And until then, folks, we are in it now, and together we are the Alliance. We'll see you next time.